Hello fellow data friends. Have you ever wondered why an ally betrayed you in a diplomatic play? Or why there's always one great power opposing you? That's why I looked into the game files to get a better understanding of IE behavior during a Diploplay. Feel free to use the timestamps if you're interested in something specific, or stay with me to have a look at diplomatic AI strategies and their effects. You are probably aware that you can see the AI strategies of each country in-game. We will focus on diplomatic strategies. The names give you a rough idea, but what exactly do they change? There are several values influenced by AI strategies, and we need this data dump table to properly display the differences. In some rows are two strategies because their values are very similar. I will explain the exact meaning of each column and then reveal the values. Infamy has two values. The first number is undesired infamy. The AI will breach that infamy only for a high value target. The second number is unacceptable infamy. The AI will never go over that threshold. Ideological difference is about the different preferences of your governments. The values you see here are about how much the AI care for these differences depending on the AI strategy. Higher values, like world revolution and maintained power balance, care more about this than, for example, territorial expansion. But how is that calculated? Let's say France has the industrialists in charge and then Austria rules the landowners. We will do this for the trade policy once. The French strongly oppose isolation and the Austrians endorse it. They disagree on that, so -1 ideological opinion. The French have a strong stance, so double the value to -2. The French oppose protectionism, but the Austrians don't care, so nothing happens. The French don't care about mercantilism, so again nothing happens. The French endorse free trade, and the Austrians oppose it, so -1. In total, -3 ideological opinion from that law set. It works the same if they agree on a law, but then you will only get +0.5. If there are multiple interest groups in the government, it's done with averages. Neutrality. A country calculates a preference score for each main participant in the diplomatic play. Both country scores and the neutrality score are compared, and the country does the action of the higher score. Hence, a higher neutrality score gives a higher chance that this country will not interfere in a diplomatic play. So, from the more common strategies, maintain power balance and economic imperialism are more likely to join a Diploplay. Boldness is used for two things. A high value of boldness makes the AI more likely to join a Diploplay without getting a sway, and a low value of boldness makes the AI more likely to back down in a Diploplay. So if you want to force a country to back down, see if they have maintained power, anti-imperialism or colonial expansion strategies. Recklessness is about how much risk a country is willing to take when starting a Diploplay. Higher values mean more risk. I didn't find how it works exactly, but I guess it works the same as in Crusader Kings. So let's say Prussia is considering to attack Austria. Let's say further, the AI estimates the military strength of Prussia to be 300 and the military might of Austria to be 400. So Prussia is unlikely to attack because they are weaker. But if Prussia has a unified Germany strategy with recklessness of 0.5, Prussia overestimates its own military by 50% and thinks it has 450 military power, hence it's likely to attack. Aggression is a probability that this country will start a Diploplay, though the values are percentages. I didn't find, however, how often that probability is checked, but it still gives a good overview. Notice how many strategies are more aggressive versus enemies that fulfill a certain criteria. Most noticeably, economic imperialism is very aggressive against the big late-game Japan. Each strategy also has some preferred or less preferred war goals, which is more or less likely to use. Most preferences are somewhat more likely, but there are also some big weight changes, like for armed isolation or anti-imperialism. That's all for country strategies. What do you think so far? Any comments on the strategies or any tips for me regarding my presentation? During a Diploplay, each country with an interest in the region will calculate a preference score for each side and a neutrality score. The country will act accordingly to the higher score. That score may change during the Diploplay and can be influenced by other participants. You can actually see the preference scores and the neutrality score in-game during a Diploplay, but it's quite cumbersome and it's too late by this point, you're already committed to the Diploplay. So let's analyze what influences these IE decisions so you can make an educated guess before starting a Diploplay. We'll start with neutrality. Every country gets 50 base neutrality, no questions asked. Then the values from the AI strategies from the previous chapters gets added. The biggest and probably the least interesting factor is a country having no army at all. They get 1000 neutrality, but you will not care about them, do you? Neutrality is raised by 200 if the country is in a conflict with an at least equally strong enemy. So if Great Britain is fighting a native uprising or a minor war, they won't care and will likely still join your war. If a country is bankrupt, they will get plus 100 neutrality, but then the country is probably weak anyway due to the bankruptcy modifiers. If a subject of the country in question is involved, then the country gets lower neutrality, so it's more likely to join the side and probably not yours. If the Diploplay is a native uprising, then the country gets plus 50 neutrality. If the country has a truce with the primary participant and is not allied or in a subject relation with either primary participant, then it gets 50 neutrality. This is the only value where truces are considered. So getting a truce with a big country like Great Britain and then attack one of their subjects won't work because a truce is ignored in this case. The next factors are all scaling factors depending on different conditions. The first takes the debt percentage of a country and adds it to neutrality. So 31% debt adds 31 neutrality points. The percentage of devastation across a country gets added and it's weighted by population. So if a highly populated state has a lot of devastation, the country gets more neutrality. The same goes for turmoil. If a country has a relative weak army, then it gets more neutrality. The weaker, the more neutrality. It's done by comparing the military power to the military power average of all involved countries. I tested this briefly in Germany. Since there are a lot of small countries, the average gets dragged down a lot, and for example Bavaria doesn't get this weak country modifier. But you probably don't care too much about weak countries anyway. If the preference scores for both primary participants are rather similar, though the country is somewhat undecided, then the neutrality score gets raised by up to 50. And last, if the rank of both primary countries is lower than the rank of the country itself, it gets plus 5 neutrality per rank difference. So for example, if two minor powers fight, a major power would get plus 5 neutrality. Okay, we're done with neutrality. Are you still with me? Well, who am I kidding, right? You're Victoria 3 players. You love numbers. We now know how the neutrality score is calculated. But what about the preference score? The preference score consists out of two parts. One is called Sympathy by the developers. This part is semi-random, meaning you can somewhat control it. I call the other part rational, because it's only influenced by cold hard logic. We will start with the rational part. If you have good relations with a country, then it's more likely to join on your side. On the flip side, a country is less likely to join your side if you have bad relations with them. But as you notice, cordial and poor don't add a lot of score, so don't be surprised if a cordial great power still joins against you. As you probably expected, a good attitude towards a country makes it more likely that a nation joins to help. But you probably did not expect that the attitude towards all backing countries matters as well. So let's say Britain is supporting you in a Diploplay and France is antagonistic against Britain, then France is less likely to help you. The same holds true for bad attitudes with different values. As you see, the values for bad attitudes are generally bigger than for good ones. The preference score also takes ideological opinion into account. There's an explanation in the chapter for AI strategies for the calculation if you missed that. Positive opinion is generally less influential than negative one. Also, it is considered much more strongly if the Diploplay is a revolution. The AI is more likely to join on the side of an allied nation, although it's even more likely to help in the defensive situation. Keep in mind that an alliance likely also means higher relations for bigger relations bonus. An AI country will very likely not support a secession if the culture is big enough to start a secession in its own country. If an AI country is already backing one side, it gets a little bonus to not switch sides. The next one is interesting. The AI is less likely to support a non-allied, unrecognized power against a recognized one. If the recognized power don't ask for significant territorial concessions, it's even more unlikely to help. Treaty ports count as non-consequential, though that gets a bigger number. Last but not least, If a non-allied unrecognized power is attacking and wants significant concessions, it will not be supported. So, if you are attacking as unrecognized, don't expect any help. That's it about the rational part, and we will look at sympathy next. In the meantime, are there some other topics you would be interested in, so I can dive into the game files to explain them? This is possible for Victoria 3 and Crusader Kings 3. So, Sympathy. It adds randomness to the Diploplay. Firstly, the attacker gets between 2 and 20 support points. That is the range of the random roll. The defender gets a double amount. So on average, AI countries are more likely to support the defender, but you may roll lucky. If the defender is the subject or an ally, then the attacker gets a lot of negative sympathy. If, on the other hand, the attacker is the subject or an ally, then the defender gets a lot of negative sympathy, though less than in the first case. This just means that a country is less likely to join against a subject or an ally. If the enemy of a country has a lot of infamy, then this country gets sympathy based on the infamy level of the enemy. This means that countries tend to band together against high infamy nations. Next, there are sympathy adjustments for the player depending on the game rule. It makes it more likely that the player gets help, but it does not really change if a country will join against the player. Now some war goal related stuff. A country gets sympathy depending on the infamy value each war goal against this country has. So the starting war goal gets a small discount. Also, if a war goal is added through throwing, that also gets a discount. And when you turn a war goal into a primary demand, the target of the war goal gets sympathy up to half of the infamy value. So each point of infamy added through war goals is more likely that other countries join against you, because you're a warmonger. This sympathy through war goals is very likely the reason why many players find the diplomacy system confusing. It is because the player infuses a lot of randomness. Let's look at an example of how much sympathy a country will get if you attack and go all in on infamy. At first, the defender gets sympathy for being the defender. Let's say your first war goal was 20 infamy. The first war goal is discounted, so you get up to 15 sympathy. Then you add a second war goal and make that primary. Then you add a third war goal and also make this one primary. By now, your infamy level is notorious. In total, all the infamy from war goals gives the enemy up to 145 sympathy. Depending on the role, that will have massive impact on the Diploplay. We can easily verify that in game. Let's say you play France and want to conquer the Rhineland. In this case, Great Britain gets 9 sympathy for Prussia, and Russia has 39 sympathy for Prussia. Now let's add war goals and make primary demands. Now Russia has 81 sympathy, and I can't even check Britain because they just joined Prussia. So high infamy wars may turn the world against you. That's it for the theory part, but we are not done yet. Let's test our knowledge in a field test. We are playing Great Britain at the game start and we want to make Greece our protectorate. Can we make an educated guess if any nation will protect Greece, and if so, which one? The important players in this area are Russia, France, Austria and the Ottomans. Each of these nations will make the Diploplay a major war. First, let's check Greece's diplomacy. It has cordial relations with Russia. That means plus 10 support score from Russia. And about attitude, Austria is protective towards Greece. That means it's a big 25 preference score from Austria. France and the Ottomans either don't care or even dislike Greece. So we care only about Austria or Russia intervening. First check, can we challenge the preference score for Greece with our own preference score? Austria is cooperative towards us, but has no good relations. Russia is just neutral everywhere. The AI generally prefers to support a defender in a Diploplay, so we need to calculate the preference score for Greece versus the neutrality. So the next step is AI strategies. Austria has maintained balance. That strategy does not boost neutrality. Russia has colonial expansion, that means plus 25 neutrality. They also have a lower preference score for Greece from relations and attitude. The protectorate play against Greece gives 9 infamy, so up to 7 sympathy after the discount for the first war goal. And Greece gets up to 40 sympathy from being a defender. If I add no further infamy war goals, Russia is very likely not joining, so let us concentrate on Austria. Base neutrality is 50. Can we find a reason that it would be higher? Austria is not in a war against an equal enemy, it has no debt, and there's no rank difference. It's a game start, so probably also no turmoil. So the neutrality score likely is still 50. What about ideological opinion? Greece and Austria are both ruled by the landowners, so they will agree on some laws at least, so let's say about 5 support points. So in total, Austria has 30 preference score for Greece and up to 47 sympathy depending on the random roll. The neutrality is 50, so I say there's a real risk that Austria will join against us. Let's test that theory. Okay, we declared the war, and let's first check Russia. They rolled really high on the sympathy part, but the bonus neutrality from the colonial expansion strategy makes a difference here. So let's check Austria. Okay, Austria rolled low on sympathy, lucky us. And since they rolled so low, the preference score between us and Greece is below 50, so that boosts neutrality. Seems like we got lucky, so let's hit speed 5 and no, Austria still joined. Probably the sway was too good. So now you should have a good idea what to look for when declaring a war. And if you want to see a GDP growth comparison between Vanilla and One Proud's Bavaria and Victoria Streaks mod, click on the video at the upper right corner. Thanks a lot for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing.